In this week's episode of Making and Musing, I've got cast-on-itis, so stick around to see what I've been working on. Hi, I'm Harriet. Welcome to Musing Maker. Now, this is my weekly podcast episode devoted to all the things that I've been working on and thinking about in the world of fiber arts and knitting and crochet and weaving and spinning. And this week it's all about the new cast-ons. We've had a couple of days where we've had slightly nicer weather and it's not quite so cold and icy, and I've been all about wanting new spring tops. So let's get into it. So the newest cast-on is one that I mentioned last week that I've been kind of interested in doing for a really long time, and I am not disappointed in the result, and that is Caitlin Hunter's Miserina. So I impulsively decided to cast this on last Saturday night, even though yes, I've got other works in progress. I don't care, I just wanted to do this one. So here it is. So I think, as I mentioned in my last podcast, right, the light tan that I'm using is Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock Light in the color Driftwood, and the color work is a sock yarn. So this is the sock yarn, and pretty sure it's in the round, and the color is Brick. And so it's shaping up really nicely. One of the things that was kind of interesting about the Miserina top is that it has both lace work and cable work and color work. Or lace work, cable work, color work. Yeah, not both. All three things. So you can see this like right here. Right, so you start out at the top doing a little bit of pretty easy lace work. Then you've got this nice simple cable, and then they all sort of mesh together really well with the color work. So I'm actually using ladderback jacquard to carry my floats, and I've sort of, you can see it on here, right? So this is the first time that I've used ladderback jacquard consistently across a larger sweater yoke, and I'm liking it, right? I decided to kind of tuck one set of floats behind the cables, right? So you can see you have that little extra stitch that you add in. And so the only challenge with that is sort of getting used to when you make the cable cross, being sure that you include that. And I've opted to purl the extra stitch for the ladderback jacquard. And so that means that on the flip side, right, those ladders are a row of knits. And so I think that that kind of neatens the way that it looks. You can obviously knit your ladderback jacquard stitch. And if you've never tried ladderback jacquard before as a way of carrying floats, I highly recommend it. It's actually quite simple. It seems like a more complicated process. Basically, as you knit along, right? Like ladderback jacquard is something that you put in if you've got if you're doing particularly fair isle and you've got long floats, right? So that you're having to carry the yarn across, an expanse that's greater than maybe 5 or 6 stitches. Right? You want to make sure that you keep the stretchiness of the fabric and the floats as you carry them. And so, if you've got very long floats, I mean, it's less cumbersome maybe in the yoke of a sweater, but if, for example, you've got them in something like sleeves, like those long floats, they can get kind of loose and dangly. You can get your fingers on them when you go to put the garment on. And they also just don't, they don't make the inside of your garment look very neat. And so some people just don't care. But I kind of wanted it to, I wanted to practice using ladderback jacquard, and I also wanted it, to kind of have the floats look neater. And so basically with ladderback jacquard, you just take and you're, kind of pulling both yarns to the front and then adding an extra stitch in that color that you're carrying across, and then swinging them around to the back and carrying on. And so it ends up creating this really interesting little ladder up the back of your garment. So I'm loving working on this because it's a pattern that really keeps my interest. I've got about 8 more rows of the colorwork yoke to go, and then I've decided I'm going to, the option for the body is to do either pearl bumps or an eyelet. I'm going to do the pearl bumps because I just don't really, not keen on an eyelet structure for the body of my sweater. So that awaits me, and it's shaping up very quickly. It's a short sleeve garment, so yeah. So the bulk of the work, I think, really is doing the yoke, and so it'll be kind of nice to have something that, you know, I anticipate being able to kind of work on. Yeah, like to take with me when I go out and about, like to work on a little bit more casually. Right now I do have to pay attention. I mean, I can do it while, you know, watching TV or whatever. Yeah, but you do have to pay a bit of attention, particularly at the beginning when you're doing the lace work on it. But I highly recommend the pattern. I really love it. Sorely tempted to knit at least another one of these, either for myself or as a gift knit. Yeah, so we'll see. There may be another one of these in my future. Okay, so another pattern that I'm working on is actually a Maria Wallen pattern, but it's I opted to do a Maria Wallen pattern that actually isn't a color work, but that is lace work. And so this is Maria Wallen's Orchid, and so this is what I have of that. Oops. Get this straightened out so you can see it a little better. So as you can see, it's a lacework top, and I am using Holstgarn. It's my cone of Holstgarn, and this is Holstgarn Tides, and it is in the color of Bluebell. And so this is a Holstgarn Tides is a wool silk blend, and so I'm doing this on size 3 needles. And I forgot to mention that the Miserina that I'm working on, I'm actually using a US 6. So these are for that pattern, and these are US 3. And the lace pattern itself, I'm not finding terribly challenging. I mean, it does, again, it's one that requires your attention. The part that I mean, I like it, but it was really, what took the most time for me was actually this, I think she calls it a fancy rib on the bottom, right? So it's beautiful, I like it, but I'm dreading having to do it again at some point because it really was a slog. Yeah, it was just challenging. But yeah, I'm working on this as another, you know, potential spring top, right? It's because it's wool and silk. It's pretty lightweight, similar to the Miserina. Both of them are kind of warmish, transitional tops, I guess I could say. Both of them would be something that I could wear over a dress, over a longer sleeve shirt, and then kind of transition to wearing them on their own as the warmer months come. So yeah, I'm liking Maria Wallen's orchid pattern, but it is one that kind of, it requires some mental capacity, so I find myself not picking it up as often. But yeah, I have gotten quite a bit done on the, I think that's the front that I'm working on right now, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, and the third recent cast on that I have is actually a sock pattern that I spotted years ago when I first started making socks, and I kind of knew when I looked at it that it was something that was going to be a bit too challenging for me at the time, but it kind of was something that I always had in mind that I wanted to return to. And so that is the Double Helix Socks by Jenny Stamen, and then I will show you what I have. Right, so I've worked on, right, I've got the heel, right? So this sock has a really interesting construction in that you basically you knit it from the heel outward, and you kind of work around and around. The pattern is a free pattern. It's available online. She's posted a couple of videos to help you start out the sock itself, and then she has a lot of diagrams to show you how the construction works. And I did a bunch of kind of sample practice heels rather in a DK weight sock yarn to kind of get up and going with the pattern a little bit, because it's a little bit challenging when you first sort of encounter it. I mean, it's really intriguing. The one thing that I still have to kind of work on, as you can see, like leave some holes. Right, so I've got to kind of figure out why that's happening. And I think at this point I can simply go back through and sort of loop through and, you know, when I finish the sock, just close those up a little bit. But like on this other side, I didn't have the same problem. So it's definitely something that I'm doing in terms of the way that I'm carrying the yarn. So I found this, yeah, it's a really, this is not a pattern that you can work on out and about, or even, you know, if you're living in a crowded or busy house. You've got to have like time and space and quiet to work on this. It doesn't take that long to do, but it does, yeah, it requires your attention. And so I'm using this light colored sock yarn is Pearl Soho's Fine Print, and the color is Pale Hydrangea. And then this dark blue, I believe, is a, it's Cascade Heritage sock, I think. It's one that I bought a long time ago, and I've since lost the label on it, but I'm pretty sure that's the yarn that I'm using for that. And so, yeah, it's an intriguing little pattern. It's something that I keep returning to and practicing on and working with. I'm now at the point where I finished the heel, and then, so you knit the sock from the heel, from the back of the heel forward, and then you do a provisional cast on kind of around that, you know, sort of little cup that you've created of the heel, and then you have the option, right? You can work up the foot or up the leg or out the foot, right? It doesn't matter which one. You just pick the one that you want to work on at that particular point in time. So you're basically knitting the heel first up to sort of that, you know, area where on a heel flap and gusset you'd be starting the gusset, and you're kind of doing that and then kind of working it in two parts out from there. So it's really kind of an interesting, you know, sort of thing, right? Because a lot of times, like, people knit socks and they do, you know, cuff down, then they kind of do an afterthought heel or a forethought heel where they're sort of, you know, kind of planning to do the heel once they're finished. And this sock kind of has you plan to do the heel first, right? You have to do the heel first to get that that spiral pattern, and then you have your choice of which you want to work after that, right? It doesn't matter whether you work up the leg or across, you know, out the foot to the toe. After you do that, it's fascinating way to sort of think about socks and sock construction. If you can, let me know down in the comments if you've found any spring cast-ons that you're really intrigued by or looking forward to undertaking this year. See you again next week.